Welcome to the Global Shapers Community Sustainability Podcast, the show where we talk about the ideas that matter with people who make a difference. I am Riya, and I am having another interesting guest with me, Hari. So, Hari is a passionate advocate for sustainable development, and as a founder of Beyond Sustainability, he is leading a startup which deals in corporate sustainability, and he is also teaching to MBA students and school going students some courses about sustainability. With his engaging and interactive workshops, he is teaching some complex ideas and issues to the students in very simple way. So, Hari, before we dive into this, can you talk about your journey, how you started from your bachelor's in electronics engineering to this sustainability field, how you came in this field?
Yeah, firstly, thanks, Ria. Thanks for having me and thanks for the Global Shapers community as well. Happy to engage in this conversation and hopefully it will be inspiring to the audience. And yeah, so about me, I probably wanted to do something useful to the society. And I came across a documentary called Before the Flood, which was about climate change. And they spoke a lot about that people talk a lot about climate change and very less action is being taken. I think it was during the second years of my bachelor's, and I was very moved by it and wanted to do something regards to the problem and the challenge, and I tried to find answers. And I think one thing led to another, and then eventually ended up with Beyond Sustainability, and it's been 3 years, and it's been a smooth journey. So yeah, I think that's about it. And I went out probably after my bachelor's, I went out to pursue my master's studying about climate change in the Netherlands. And I think the couple of years that I spent there really opened up my mind and the world. And that's where I also wanted to become a social entrepreneur. And I felt that was my ikigai, or the purpose of my life. I felt that was my calling. And then I think thing led to another. That's where we are.
Can you tell us about your childhood? Like, how was your childhood? Your like, what you were doing in your childhood? Was this something that was in your mind before?
No, I think not much before the documentary. I think the documentary was sort of more like a gestation point. But before that, I wasn't a very extroverted or a very active child, even in my classroom or anything. I'd be very introverted, and I had a very different childhood growing up. But I think the kind of school that I was in, it was very competitive, and to even to do go participate in competitions outside and all of that, we had to compete internally and win, and only then we got an opportunity to go outside and participate and showcase our talent and things like that. In that way, I think it was a very competitive environment, and I think inherently that pushed me a lot. I think I developed a lot of skills that I wasn't even aware of until I went to my bachelor's college, and I was with my other peer group of people in my bachelor's. But I wasn't a very opened up for an extroverted person that I am right now. But I was very introverted. I loved writing. I loved storytelling. I used to participate in a lot of dramas and events, and even do a couple of performances in the annual day and do drama and things like that. I think that's a natural skill that I inherently had. I don't know again how I acquired that. I think it just naturally happened. But apart from that, I don't really think I want to do something like this. And if I had spoken to my 13-year-old or 15-year-old, and if I told when I am at this age and I'm doing so much of things, I wouldn't have definitely believed. It would have maybe been like a dream beyond what I would have wanted to achieve. But I think I'm glad that I'm to be doing what I'm doing.
So that documentary you mentioned about that changed your perspective and it shifted your field towards sustainability. So that was the only reason, or were there any other reason apart from that?
I think, like I said, that's probably was an initiation point. I can't exactly say uh, why, but probably I always felt if I'm doing a job or if I'm doing something where I spend a major part of my life, I wanted that to be useful to society. and useful in the sense it would help people become better. It would help something that's a social problem. And I think that is something that I felt I had inherently. That maybe because of the movies I watched, maybe because of the experiences that I had growing up as a child, and I felt sometimes I didn't have someone to listen to my voice, and I felt I can be a voice to people helping on certain things. So I think that was inherently there, but I think this documentary gave me a cause to work for, and I think that cause was something that I chose to be climate change, and I think that one thing led to another.
Can you tell us like why only climate change was your focus? And not other things?
No, I think that's what I'm telling you. Right, I think it was probably one cause that I picked up. There are so many global problems and so
So
many
many
other
issues.
things, but I felt climate change was something that was connecting to me personally, and I felt it was about giving voices to animals and other species that don't have a voice. And we as human beings are very anthropocene, they say, where you put yourself at the center of the earth and you take the egoistic stand on that humans rule the world or humans are the most evolved species and things like that. But I felt the other species or animals or plants don't have a say, or we feel that they don't have a voice, and we kind of overpower it. So I think that was something that deeply touched me, and I felt I could be the voice in trying to strike a balance between the ecosystem and what we try to do. Because at the end of the day, we are all part of the same world, and without animals or plants or anything that's around them, we're just a product of them, and that's how we've evolved to. So, but there is still like a disconnect between it, and that is something that I want to solve.
Okay, so can you tell us about your perspective on this climate crisis?
So, perspective in the sense, I think climate change is a global problem. I think a lot of us are not aware of the impact that climate change can have. So, for example, to give you how things have changed, we sit here in Chennai in June and we are right now talking, but it's so hot out there, which is not normal for us to have this temperature at this point of time. And historically, June is a month in Chennai where there's not a lot of rainfall that happens, and there's not even a pin drop of rain that has been happening over the decades. But in the last 2 years, if you look at the meteorological record, June is the month where Chennai is recorded the most rainfall, and that's very abnormal. And all of these are an effect of climate change. Flooding is something that used to happen rarely, but now every time it rains, there's a flood that happens in Chennai. And cyclones are natural phenomena, but something that happens once in a decade. But right now, every year we are used to getting 2, 3 cyclones, and all of that is an effect of climate change, and they directly affect our day-to-day livelihood as well. So then that is something that people need to be first aware of how it is affecting our lives. And as we have our children and our grandchildren, how will the world look like? How will the city look like? And is it even livable? Is a question that all of us probably need to have. And all these climate impacts are only going to increase day by day. If it is not affecting you today, it's because you have a privilege. Because you have a privileged lifestyle, you have an AC that you can switch on when the temperature is hot. But 90% of population in India doesn't have access to AC or a car in their transport. So then it means then you have a privilege that you're able to live off. But there are other people in the city who are suffering because of this. And all of that is already taking an effect and toll on people and on livelihoods as well.
So can you tell us about your work and how is it contributing to the climate crisis?
So what we majorly do is we go to industries, and close to 60% of emissions globally are from industries. So that is what something that we want to address and help companies become more sustainable. So we go to corporates, help them on their entire sustainability management as like their extended team and as subject matter experts. So we help them on the carbon management. Every company has planned to become net zero by a certain year and a certain point because of global compliances, regulations, or sometimes the customer demands them for them to become net zero and things like that. So we help them to do that. So we go to corporates, measure their carbon emissions, and help them implement strategies and plans on how they can become net zero, implement projects. And apart from that, there is also something called as ESG, environment and social governance, which is seen like a metric to measure how sustainable a company is. If you have to develop sustainably, planet alone can't be considered, and there is planet, people, and profit, which has to holistically develop, and that is seen as sustainable development. And ESG is seen as a metric measure that at a corporate level. So then we also help companies on their overall ESG management and can help them improve their ESG metrics as well. So that's very much.
So talking about carbon credits, as you mentioned, so carbon credits, are they really working like in support of this, or are they just a scam or something for companies to just run off from their responsibilities if they show? And what's your take on this carbon credits?
So ideally, carbon credits are seen like an instrument to incentivize companies to look at carbon as something that they can uh, probably take action on, because carbon emissions are the cause for climate change, and there has to be some incentive for companies to reduce carbon, and carbon credits are seen like an instrument to do so. But like you said, it has a lot of gray areas. There are a lot of principles of how you should develop a carbon offset or a carbon credit. Sometimes those principles are breached, and that's where then people say that this is not ideal something that works out. So, say for example, a company emits 1,000 tons, and they plant trees enough to capture the 1,000 tons of CO2 emissions, and then the trees have to grow for a certain period of time and all of that, right? What if a forest fire happens? So then the trees also become like a net emitter, and this offset for which the companies planted those trees also is not being considered. So all of those are scenarios that are challenges, and how do you also measure effectively that this much carbon emission is being taken by so and so projects, and those are also a gray area for people to work with. But still, I do believe that there needs to be, because we at the end of the day we can talk whatever, but we live in a capitalistic world, and there has to be some financial incentive that is being given to the companies to kind of be a motive for them to take action. And I think carbon credits can be an effective tool to do so. But if I personally need to have a say in it, I would probably want to see how we can build a robust system that can probably potentially address these issues. And any solution cannot be a panacea solution. A panacea is a solution that doesn't have any consequence, and it's like 100% positive consequence, right? Probably carbon credits is not a panacea solution right now, but it is a solution in the direction of trying to address climate change. And if we can fix some of these challenges, I think in the long term they can be a highly sustainable solution as well. And apart from carbon credits, now there are water credits that people are looking at, there are biodiversity credits that people are looking at. At idealistic level, they sound good, but at implementation, they have to be really intended to solve for the planetary crisis and not just benefit people who want to make money out of this as a subject that they want to work with. So I think if that mindset changes and if it balances out both, then I think that can address the issues there.
So anything you want to tell us that we all do that is not sustainable, and if we change that, then we can do like reduce waste, and we can also be sustainable every day. Is there any?
Um, Probably something that's very sensitive that I would say is for people to consume their meat consumption, because I think that's a very simple thing for us to do, something that has a huge harm. Because right now, meat consumption is become like a factory. How we used to consume meat in the past was that we were hunter gatherers, we used to hunt animals and we used to eat, or then we used to grow our own animals and then we eat them. But right now it has become like a factory, like how you produce products. Animals are seen like products, and they're packaged, they're packed, and they are being consumed and all of that. And in order to grow these animals, it takes an enormous toll on agriculture, and you need to spend enormous amount of water, energy, and agricultural land as well to do that. And I think probably if we are more conscious about meat consumption, I think that will have a huge impact. I don't mean to say that all of us should become vegetarian and all of that. That's not a point that I'm trying to see. But can you be more conscious about this? Can you reduce your meat consumption? Because in order to probably, if you look at carbon footprint of you consuming 1 kilogram of chicken, that's somewhere between 6 to 8 kgs of CO2 emissions. Similarly, in case you consume a vegetable of 1 kg, it is only about 0.01 to 0.05 kilograms of CO2 emission. So that's a huge impact
Difference.
that it has, and this only increases when it's goat and cow and all of that. So, and I think just being more conscious, just being more responsible with the meat consumption, I think really addresses this. Even at the Indian household or South Indian household, people used to have meat only once or twice in a week, like just for one meal or just one Sunday in the week people used to have. But right now it's become much more commercialized, and even a normal routine uh, food has become meat consumption, right? And I think that is something that we should probably look at addressing and see how we can be more responsible. And I think that is a very simple step that has a huge impact. And secondly, is to reduce or probably see how we can be more conscious in our commute and more development of metro within cities. We can reduce the amount of cars that are on the road, and if we can make certain parts of the city more habitable for walking and for cycling, and if we can ban cars in certain parts of the city, then that is going to promote more of people commuting by walk, commuting by cycling, and I think those are certain little steps that the corporation or the city planners can do, which would eventually increase one just a basic livability of how do we enjoy the city itself, and probably the carbon footprint that happens because of traffic and all that. So I think these are a couple of things that I would say we can be more conscious of. And thirdly, just being a conscious consumer, because everything that you consume has an impact on the environment. So if you buy a jean, it takes 10,000 liters for you to manufacture one jean. 10,000 liters is probably something that you would consume in your household in 4 months. That's the amount of water it takes to manufacture one jean. And now with fast fashion and that you can order uh, your clothes online and they get delivered in 2 days and 3 days and all of this, it's enormous impact that it has on the environment. Again, I am no one to say that you will just do that, but all I'm trying to say is all of this has an impact on the environment that's around you. And if can you be a conscious consumer, and every time that you pay money for something, just be a little cautious that this has an impact on the environment. And if that you be a conscious consumer is all that I would probably say. And there's a quote that I read in one of Dan Brown's book called Inferno. It says that the darkest places in the hell are reserved for ones who don't act when there's a moral crisis. You can say that I wasn't aware of this, or I wasn't the one who was causing this crisis and all of that, but that's not an answer for, because you're still part of this and you are part of the cycle. So I think morally also I think it's important that you are responsible and you are conscious of each of the choices that you are making. And you can't just say, hey, everyone's doing it, so I'm also doing it. Then where's your morality is question. That was it.
Yeah, if we can't just stop consuming it, we can just less frequently consume it. If people want to consume, then they should be conscious of it. Okay, so my next question will be, like some people say that we are fighting for daily lives, like we are earning money and we are so busy with our lives paying the bills. So how will you convince that person to just be tech conscious because they have their argument that we are busy dealing with our lives and earning and paying bills. Like why does matter? Those.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fair question to ask. I've also thought about this, and if you see a lot of difference between how we at developing countries look at sustainability versus how people in developed countries look at sustainability, and we try to benchmark what we want to do here with what we see abroad. And sometimes there's a lot of guilt tripping also that happens to say, hey, you guys are not responsible and compare it with people in the western part of the world. But one thing that we need to understand is that people in those countries where they're more climate conscious or eco conscious, they have gone through the cycle where they have gone through this economic development, and there is something called as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So your initial hierarchy of needs are like more your physiological needs, where you need to have proper food, you need to have proper shelter, and you need to have your basic needs met.
Clothes.
Yeah, clothes and all of this met. Say if you're hungry now, your priority is not to listen to this podcast,
Yeah.
it's to go get food,
Food. Yeah.
basically, right? And that's the initial need. Once that is met, then people look at social needs to say, hey, I want to take care of my family, I want to have bondage, I want to have friends, and all of those things. And once that is met, then people want to improve themselves. And they say that's when people say, hey, I want to exercise, I want to go form a habit, I want to read books, and all of those, right? Once that is met, then they look at aspirational needs like how can I make someone else's life better? How can I contribute to a particular cause? How can I volunteer and things like that? So it's very important that we understand this probably pyramid or this layer and see where do we personally fall under. And we see a lot of people in developed countries have gone through this cycle and they have aspirational values and aspirational needs that they want to contribute to much more higher than where we are in this part of the world because we still talk a lot about development. So I think that putting into this lens, first and foremost thing is for us to develop people. And can we do the development sustainably is where the question should be. So as you look at development, can you look at projects and initiatives that sustainably develop? We are not saying that we shouldn't develop or we shouldn't economically do that, but can you do it sustainably? Say, for example, everyone wants to go to movies, everyone wants to party, and they want to have fun, but can you have a responsible party? Is the question here. And it's not to say that you cannot party with people or you cannot buy a car or that you cannot take a flight, go abroad or have your vacation. Or, it's not to say that you don't have to do that because climate change is happening. The idea here is can you be much more conscious about that and can you be responsible at each step that you're doing, and it's got everything to do with mindset. It's got nothing to do with how much money you earn or how much you're spending or nothing of that. It's just about how you lead your life and how is your lifestyle is much more important, and this mindset needs to be incorporated in people from day zero, and it's much more easier to do it to children than to adults. Is something that I learned in our experience. So then our focus is then more on changing the people's mindset, and yeah, I think that's probably the reasons for. And just to have that mindset that I'm be conscious, but still do whatever we want to do, and that one can be a bit more conscious with the question.
Yeah, but development is necessary for us to think about sustainability, and we can parallelly do it together, like sustainable development.
Yeah.
Means like development, but with sustainability.
And I'll also probably, sorry to stop you also, and all of these things we do at the end of the day to be happy, right?
Yeah.
And can probably just guess what is the happiest country in the world that people call that country as even kingdom of happiness. Can just guess what country? Sorry to put you on the spot. But
Okay, Norway.
Norway,
Yeah.
any other country?
Denmark.
Denmark, Norway, and all of these are countries that are highly sustainable.
Yeah.
All of these are countries that people are having sustainability as part of their lifestyle as well, right? And Bhutan is called as the happiest country in the world. And Bhutan is highly sustainable, and they say close to 66% of their forest cover will not be affected. They say there's nothing that we're going to do with the 66% because we feel that this is important for us to have a peaceful and ecologically friendly life that we want to have along with nature. And all the rest development and everything that they plan is within the rest one third of the country. And people there are so happy and they are the happiest country in the world. So then there is already an answer that there are a lot of countries that balance between both of this. Even Iceland is an example where they do use a lot of geothermal energy. They are blessed with that and they are highly sustainable as well with what they do. And people are even happy there. And there are countries like this which are an example, and I'm sure we can definitely take some lessons from there and implement it at a very Indian context, and we can Indianize these lessons and implement it to make it work for our uh, culture and our society.
I think if we are in harmony with the nature, then we can be happy if the nature is in harmony with us. Okay. So, can you tell me one thing that you would like to redesign that is daily use thing that you can redesign? What would it be?
Probably, I think I cannot pick one particular product because everything needs to be redesigned. And
It
because
could be anything like some cups or something, anything like we use in daily basis, on daily basis, anything.
um, probably I think the vehicles we use, definitely we do have answers with EV and all of that. But if we can find a highly renewable source for us to use in our commute, and I think most of the emissions also do happen because of transportation. And I think if there is some way where if we can travel or have commute that has zero pollution, then I think that can be one particular thing that I can say about. Probably I cannot think of a particular product, but more like a systems kind of a change that will have some way that we can travel from point A to point B, but still causing more or less, very less impact on the environment. Is probably one thing that I would.
Like electric buses, electric vehicles are nowadays people are taking that.
Yeah, something like even with EV, it has pros and cons. Something
Yeah.
sort of hydrogen bus or something where the end of life emission of it is pure water because you use the hydrogen power buses and things like that. Maybe a solution like that we can probably commercialize and use something like that.
So anything that you would like to tell us to the youngsters that they can do for to be more conscious about the sustainability and climate change, something that they can do on daily basis.
Um, So I think, like I told earlier, it's probably to consume less meat and all of that. But now with the ongoing of lot of digital consumption that we do, with a lot of time spent digitally, there is also something called as digital carbon footprint. So each time that you send a message on Instagram, it has a digital carbon. It basically has a carbon footprint. Each time you send a GIF, it has a carbon footprint. And to give you an example, you watching Netflix or movie on Netflix for 3 hours is almost equivalent to you traveling in a car of 5 to 10 kilometers. Because all of these are something that is stored on data servers, and in order to run those data servers, it takes enormous amount of energy, and in order to cool those data servers, it takes enormous amount of water. And with the advent of AI and ChatGPT and Gemini and all of these take enormous amount of data to run, and that's becoming a huge problem. Google was a climate neutral company, and because they started investing into Chennai from last year onwards, they are not climate neutral because the carbon emissions have really shooted up a lot. And all of these are something that we are not conscious about. And you running 10 AI generated images is going to have as much as impact as almost you are going to travel in your bike for 1 or 2 kilometers. So you might think that you're sitting at home, you are not causing any emissions, but even anything that you do digitally also has a digital carbon footprint. And probably I think that is another thing that I feel that we can be more conscious of, even with using AI and things like this, until we find a highly sustainable way to run these AI agents.
Can you tell us about an incident where you find that company which was not taking care of this environment and suddenly just shifted their mind and really making a difference now? Like, can you tell the incident?
I definitely can't tell names, but largely, I also don't want to pinpoint any particular company, but largely a shift has happened because a lot of the consumers have started to ask about sustainability, and suddenly a lot of companies that felt this was like a good to have started shifting to a mindset of this is mandatory, right? Because their customers demand them to do so. So we see company, to give an example, that supply to brands like H&M and all of them. And because H&M asks them to be sustainable, they've taken sustainability to be a bit more serious. And why H&M starts looking at it is also because some of their consumers are becoming more sustainable and they want to make their products more sustainable, right? And I think it's all intertwined. As a conscious consumer, if you become conscious, then a company has to also provide you a conscious product because that's what you demand in the market, and then that has a trickle down effect as well. So I think all of these are interconnected, and I think this customers demanding companies to do so is also has caused a major shift, at least at the Indian MSMEs scenario, and I think that's something that's really started to drive for sustainability larger with all these companies.
So, can you tell us about some particular like incident where you faced a setback in your work, where you thought that it is tough one to deal with, but you still managed to deal with it? Is there some incident you would like to share? The challenges.
Um, there's a lot of them. I think every day there are plenty of challenges. But
Some incident that you remember till today, like it was the
all of it,
okay.
but it's just that I'm trying to think of okay, what is that I can share. So, very recent one that we had was we were working with one of the vendors, and for some reason they couldn't take up the project or they gave a commitment, and within like as we were closer to the deadline, they for some reason they didn't want to take up the commitment and they said, no, I can't do this, and they were like, hey, it's impossible to do, and all that. But we wanted to deliver it because we know it can be done, and we had to quickly find another vendor who can come help us to support it and find ways on how we can deliver it. And on a very short deadline, we were able to complete something, and it was a very huge government project as well that we had given a commitment for, and we had to deliver. So I think I had a point where I was challenged to say that something can't be done, and that something wouldn't be possible. But we had to quickly make a decision and do something because I inherently wanted to get it done because we had given a commitment and someone had trusted us. So then I think that really challenged a lot of my self belief, and we had to persevere to get it done. So I think that was something that was very critical and a challenge that we felt we overcame.
Okay.
And I think a lot of the times I feel if you have a challenge that's in front of you, if you kind of try to flip the challenge and ask, how can I get it done? Then I think you automatically find answers and find ways to get things done rather than just looking at the challenge and say all doors are closed and nothing can be done. So I think that was a huge lesson that I learned here.
So till now you work with the like students also you work with for the workshops, classes, and you are also running your startup. And what is your goal for future? Like what you want to do in future? Are there some goals that you want to achieve in future?
Yes, so I think the objective with Beyond Sustainability has always been like that we are a social enterprise and that we want to help people take climate action. I strongly believe there are already enough technological solutions that are needed for us to address climate change. It's just that there has to be a bridging between this and mainstream market that has to happen and people start taking conscious action on this. So that was the problem that we wanted to solve for, and we want to be enablers and empowerers for people to take climate action. And we see there are 4 levels at which you can take climate action. So one is at the individual level, two is at a community neighborhood level, three is at a corporate company level, and four is at a city government policy level. And we want to work at all these 4 levels. And we initially started working with companies and corporates and started working at an organization level, and then started doing courses, training programs, and work with individuals on their individual level, and also help people even build their career with green skills. And when I started working in sustainability, it was more like a good to have kind of a thing, but something that made you feel good. But right now, we can even have a career that's purely based on sustainability as well. And I think that is also something that we want to solve for and help people build careers on this. And we started working with few government initiatives and also want to work on that and help with long-term policy changes and help on doing so. And in the longer run, we also want to work or form our own community and start taking a lot of community-driven on-ground climate action. So I think that's more of what we want to do in the future, and everything that we've been doing so far has been one step towards it. And beyond sustainability, at least we look at what's our next step and take it one step at a time.
So, as an entrepreneur, so what challenges you faced in starting initial phase, and what could you give advice to someone like who is also in the same phase, starting his or venture? Like, what would you give the advice? Like, what would be the advice that you would give?
Yeah. So we are a bootstrapped startup from day one, and I think constantly cash flow management and all of that is a challenge that we also come up with. So far, touchwood, we've also been able to grow being purely customer funded, and that is something principally I've been wanting to do it from day one, that we will be customer or funded by our revenue, and that's how we want to grow and all of that. So having that, I think that's been a challenge. Being able to manage cash flows and all of that is something that we been also being able to come under. And I also had a co-founder issue early on at that time, and that also kind of helped me to overcoming that was also a huge challenge. That I think these two are two major challenges at a very early stage that I had to counter with and address and overcome it. But still, what really inspired me or drove me to do it was that I felt this was calling, and that this is a larger problem that we are solving for, and my own personal problems weren't big enough for me, because I felt the problem of climate change is much more bigger, and the power probably came because I'm trying to address something that's even larger than my life. And in terms of entrepreneurs, I think this is what drove me. And for them to identify what drives them is what is going to give them the power on whatever challenges that they come across, right? Because I think there'll be multiple challenges that everyone will come at in their entrepreneurial journey at different levels. And I probably give like a very subjective answer, which that I would say is that what is your reason to do it, and if that is a strong motivating factor for you, it can be anything. I don't necessarily mean it has to be like purpose driven, or it can be even to say that I want to make more money, or I want to give more jobs, or that I will get a certain fame with it, or it can be anything. But that strong motive that you have to start an company or an organization is what is going to push you when you come across a lot of challenges. And I think if you're very clear with that motive, and that if that fuels you, then I'm sure that you will find the answers and you will persevere through this. And objectively, for you to find answers for problems, you have YouTube, you have ChatGPT that can tell you how you can address any objective problems. But I feel this uh, reason for you to become an entrepreneur is what would push you. And also, right now, generally, there's a strong, I would even say, overvaluing entrepreneurs and to glorify entrepreneurs and all of that, which I feel is people need to know that it comes with a lot of challenges, and it's not like a fancy thing for you to do.